Hey guys, I'm back here shooting a video. Times are slow with this. I'm kind of quarantined to the shop and some of the customers are feeling this. So I kind of been working on the planishing hammer. That's what I'm showing you. So right now I'm currently machining some dies. So I started off with basically 1.5" 4130 tool steel, and because the diameter of my dies, I had to machine it down. From there, once I got it all trued up from getting the scaling and stuff off and got it all out, it's down to the size of diameter that I want. So from there, I just keep machining and cutting the dies that I want. So I started with this, got this, and then from this, I started making these dies that fit in my machine. They're measured out to the same as Chicago pneumatic. So these planishing hammer dies can go in a planishing hammer of Chicago pneumatic. So I've got a couple things up my sleeve. So I made by hand these. I mean, obviously I turned everything down in the lathe, but the thumbnail and the thumbnail receiver, that's all done by hand. And I figured out where center was and cut it and then started playing with it. So this is the first set of dies I made, and this is for the shrinking. So that set goes there. Then what I did is on the planishing hammer itself, it had just a hammer die, and I couldn't figure out, I don't want to make a bunch of these shanks. This is a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch square shank, and I was sitting there thinking, and it popped in my head, and then looking on the internet, Jet Tooling, their planishing hammer does have this. It's basically another receiver. So you basically make this sleeve and you weld it on to the hammer end. With doing that, obviously I still got to blow some holes for pins to hold certain dies in. But from that, now I could use a regular hammer, I made a normal hammer head, but then instead of swapping out this piece, I pull the quick pin that I have on the machine over there that you'll see here in a minute. I could swap this out. I can go to the shrinking die if I want and pin it. And the reason I'm doing 2 holes is so I could work on both sides of the machine. I could work with the machine like this, like an English wheel style, or I could work into the machine. So I'm gonna blow 2 holes, and it's just, this is only gonna have 1 set of holes, the dies. So it depends which way I want to work the machine. If I got a big panel that I'm shrinking or that I'm stretching, I could run this way because obviously there's no limit for the distance. My throat is only, I think it's 27.5 inches depth. So if I'm doing a small panel, I could work into the machine. So I came up with this idea. Then after I came up with this, I made this as the initial hammerhead. So it's just flat with radius edge. This is gonna be my normal planishing hammer head. I am gonna buy some dies. I just figured the specialty ones, I might as well make because they sell for astronomical prices. So I've got the shrinking dies, the hammer head. Now what I'm working on is called a linear stretch die. And it'll work on sheet metal, it'll work on aluminum really well. The reason why I'm making this is they do make shrinkers. They do make stretchers. The problem with the shrinker and stretchers, when you start getting into the soft materials like aluminum and stuff like that, those jaws bite into the metal, and it's hard to get rid of that. The only way you can get rid of that is by either planishing it out, which makes the material thinner, or grinding it, which makes it thinner. So what I came up with, and they sell them for planishing hammers, and I figured, well, now I got a planishing hammer, so it's time to make some of those dies. So like I said, I started with the round stock. I'm machining blanks right now, and what's going to happen is I'm going to come down so far, I got to find a center line. It's going to be about 1/4 inch wide, but it's going to look like this, and I'm going to build 2 of them. And what happens is when you got 2 of them, if this is the top 1/4 inch line, this is the top 1/4 inch line, it just beats on that one edge. And you go real slow. So if it's a piece of 90-degree aluminum or whatnot, what will happen, it'll start stretching that material. and it'll stretch it to go around bends, but when you get done, it looks like I never did anything. Yes, it's gonna make it thinner, but there's no marks on it. So either way you look at it, when you stretch it, you're making the material thinner anyway. But you don't wanna make it any thinner by getting it to the shape and then turn around and having to grind your teeth marks out. Or if you do get it to shape with the teeth marks and you decide to use the English wheel or a bead roller to do it, it's gonna flatten it out, which will even make it thinner, which will change your radius of your thing. You can do it in the bead roller if you have 2 flat dies. Same principle. This will let me stretch a little bit bigger pieces, where on my bead roller, it's only gonna stretch as wide as your dies. Where this is almost 1.5 inches wide, so I could stretch 1.5 inches wide all the way around. Where the dies are only 1/2, maybe, and you could machine another die to where, but then you get into the throat depth, and then with the 90 going down, it's gonna hit the die regardless, which is the same here. But 2 flat dies on the bead roller, you could really crank it down, and you can go across aluminum, it does the same thing. But you wanna make sure when you stretch, you could stretch the whole thing, you're gonna get more, but you've gotta stretch more on the outside, less and less going on the end. So this is a blank that I've already built, and this is the new blank that I just got done cutting. I'll put this back in the lathe, machine it off, then I have 2 blanks identical, and then from there I'll go in and start shaping them to the stretcher dies. So if you guys, you need a lathe, set of calipers, some tool steel if you want to build some dies. This is a game changer when it comes to this. Instead of swapping out all these high trick heads, that you just keep this one head and you switch out all the dies. So that's what I've been doing since I've kind of been in the shop, just kind of tinkering and stuff like that. So with all that, I just figured I'd share that with you guys, that you guys can make your own dies. There's numerous style of dies out there. You can build them to where you build like a square plate, more or less, you radius the edges and you put your shank in the center of it. A lot of what I'm doing right now is basically just the round ones. I made the thumbnail die for shrinking. I know it's probably not gonna be able to shrink like what I want, like a Yoder hammer. I've been told it can probably shrink up to within a little over 1 inch in, but I do know for a fact it will shrink more than 1 inch in when you're using aluminum. It's softer, it's more pliable, it will shrink that way. Steel, I'm not gonna be able to get the Yoder hammer effect where I could really shrink it, 18 inches in and make a wheel tub. But there's other solutions for that. Tucking tools, a tucking stump that you can beat it in, and then you come back and you're doing it all by hand, and then you come back and smooth it out in the wheel. There's ways to do it, but this is gonna be for more small panels that I'm building off the car to fit the car, and then once I go over there, I can do that. Another thing I'm working on while I'm in here is it's a planishing hammer. It's gonna be a handheld one. And what I thought about when I was doing this, so this is just a Harbor Freight air hammer. What you do is you cut the handle off. All there is a hole inside there for air. Obviously there's a trigger and valving. I put an adjustable valve here from 0 to air to whatever pressure I'm running. I seen this on somebody else's post and I kind of liked it. And what happens is I put a spring in here that I had laying in the shop, and I created a piece of tubing that slips over this hammer shank. And I ended up putting another piece in there. But what happens is, as you could see, it does that. So when I weld the shank onto this and it does that, it's gonna pull my hammer back from wherever my hammer sits, and I obviously have a gap, a real thin gap so it can pound the metal. It's gonna bring it back 3/4 of an inch for this gap here. So I can get over a lip. If I did a roof skin, I can get over a drip rail, and then once I get in there, I could hammer this down. It goes right down to the metal. I could planish my welds as well. But the trick is what I'm doing. That I gotta buy, obviously, a 401 shank hammerhead that'll go in there. The bottom dies, I'm building off Chicago pneumatic. So So I'm thinking outside the box here. One tool or two tools using the same amount of die, but two different style of tools. But I'm going to use my lower dies on my normal planishing hammer to obviously work on this one. So once I get a large assortment of dies, say I get a total of, I don't know, 50, I could use those same dies for the different radiuses and stuff like that for the different radiuses that are on the car with the handheld one. So I'm just kind of utilizing what I've got. Some people will get a planishing hammer, then they'll turn around and they'll buy another company's ones of these, and maybe it's a Bailey Tools, like the cheaper model planishing hammer. You get that, and then you turn around and you decide to buy another company's handheld planishing hammer. More than likely, your bottom dies, the shanks itself, are going to be different sizes, so you cannot swap them. And that's what I'm trying to do, is build my two to where my dies are versatile. So hope this guy, helped you out. If you guys are thinking about building a planishing hammer, check out my other videos. I am going to post another video. It's going to be planishing hammer progress. It's up and not quite running yet, but it's painted, and I'm basically fine-tuning things before I actually put it to use. And there's a couple more parts that I still need to purchase. So stay tuned, go watch that video, and you guys can kind of look and see that they kind of link together, that these dies are going to be in this machine and so forth. So if you're not a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe, hit the like button down there, and stay tuned. I'll have more videos coming your guys' way.